Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it and switch on the notification bells. The algorithm has changed recently. I've been a little bit suppressed as well. So please do join me here on this channel. It will be a great big help if you can. Thank you to everyone who's joined me already. I can't do this without you. Today is Doctor Who Sunday and we are discussing the Dalek invasion of Earth as voted by you, the subscribers. If you would like to vote on the current poll, please head on over to the post page, as it's now called for some reason and has lost all sense of community of this channel. Please leave a comment below as to what you actually thought of this particular story, because way too much actually happens in this story, so I can't naturally, as expected, be able to cover it all. The Dalek Invasion of Earth was written by Terry Nation, it was directed by Richard Martin, and it aired from the 21st of November to the 26th of December 1964 to an average overnight rating of 11.9 million people. It's 2164. The Doctor, Ian, Barbara and Susan land in London. They notice that it was very quiet, not like the London they knew. Susan accidentally causes the bridge to collapse over the TARDIS, meaning they couldn't travel anywhere. She also, once again, has twisted her ankle, something that she had a habit of doing. The Doctor and Ian decide to take a look around whilst Barbara treats Susan's ankle. All four notice something that is really off. Susan and Barbara end up going with the rebels, and the Doctor and Ian get taken by the Robo-Men after discovering that the Daleks have invaded Earth. Why have they invaded Earth? What are they mining for? The Doctor, Ian, Barbara and Susan work with the rebels to put a stop to it. This story is a good one, isn't it? It's also really sad at the end as well. This is the first time we actually see a main character leave the TARDIS. Susan, played by Carol Ann Ford, is left on Earth in 2164 by the Doctor after he realises that she really shouldn't be staying with him anymore. The reason why, of course, Carol left in real life was because of the lack of development in her character. The writing for the characters are actually, in general, pretty well rounded indeed for all four of them. But other than the Doctor, they don't really progress as much as they do in early classic Who compared to New Who. And obviously it is something that they rectify in New Who later on. But I get it. She was there to constantly twist her ankle and get captured. After a while of doing the same thing, it does actually get boring. It's lovely how it's played out. William Hartnell plays it as something he doesn't want to broach with her, dreading the goodbye, dreading the awkwardness of the interaction. It's very in character with his Doctor, and the fact that he goes into the TARDIS tells me that he wanted her to make the choice for herself, but when she wouldn't, he made it for her. The speech and the delivery is fantastic. You can tell that a lot of this also includes a very real draw of the reality of Carol leaving in real life. It's quite assertive, gentle and sad all at the same time. This is the Doctor drawing the fine line between what Susan thought she needed by staying with her grandfather and what the Doctor knew that she actually needed. It marked an end to the TARDIS team as we knew it in its original format. It makes you wonder how people felt when they really watched this scene for the first time ever. This was, of course, before the days of regeneration, so it would have been a strange concept of not having Susan in the show to twist her ankle or get captured. She was, of course, the damsel in distress out of all four of them that we really didn't get with Barbara. It must have been an age thing. It's one of the first exits in Doctor Who that is truly extremely sad. It marks an end of an era. You don't get many of them in classic Who, but Susan is one of them, and you could really see it in all of their faces, the impact that it was having on them. Her exit was really well written, and it was nice to know that she would stay with David. They gave her something to work with in the final scene. Mad McCam 9841 says, "Seriously though, creepy as hell at times. A good second showing for the Daleks, but I still think writers did Susan a dirty. just didn't like the pacing of her leaving. Yes, I would agree with that. They did actually do her a dirty with everything leading up to her exit. It was actually a bit sodden. The exit scene itself was actually written very well, but the things that lead up to it, you're absolutely right. I suppose it depends on how long they actually had to write her out with the knowledge that they knew she was leaving. Had they actually known for a long time, then maybe they could have actually taken the initiative to introduce David a lot earlier so that we could actually see their relationship develop over time, and they choose to actually stay on Earth. Maybe then it would have been more natural. But who's to say? They had a time crunch back then. So actors' availability, things that are going on around them, who knows really what would have happened at the end of the day. The story itself, though, was actually very well written. And to be honest with you, who on earth expected the Daleks to return? I don't really know how they named the episodes back then, with the stories. Did they do it like the Dalek invasion of Earth and actually say then which episode title was which? Because obviously in later stories, it is just one name for the entire story. But first generation of Who, classic Who, First Doctor, it wasn't done like that at all. We have different names for each episode of a story. Now, my favorite bit in this entire story is when the Dalek actually comes out of the water. That is pretty scary stuff and very clever. Whilst I actually haven't looked up how they did it, and I don't want to ever find out either, that cliffhanger had to be awesome, seeing that thing come out of the water just like that, and more than just a bit of a shock. I will say that this is the first story where I will criticize a cliffhanger, though. We have some good ones, such as the Doctor possibly being turned into a Robo-Man only to be rescued by the rebels, and the Sliverers going towards Ian and Larry. However, in part 5, Ian is in the capsule that the Dalek wants to release, and that's where it ends. Now, I think in this case, it would have been better to have gone with a few moments later, where the Dalek shoots at the rope, causing Ian to fall down the shaft and him getting knocked out. That's really the only critique I have for cliffhangers at this present moment in time. I don't have any more for this particular story anyway. The scale models that they have for these sequences are amazing. All these practical effects prior to CGI, that's something, isn't it, really? It's so creative how they actually go about doing these creations and coming up with them because of the limited resources that they would have had back then. And it's a practice that they carried on and perhaps even sometimes still do today, actually. But it was a main practice back then. You have to really understand how perception and scaling works in order to actually create something like that. They even scaled a mini Dalek. How awesome is that? Now, in this story, they find out that the Daleks are the masters of Earth. Truly terrifying. They have evaded, especially when you know who the Daleks were based on. This is how to do your messaging without really trying. And it's very easy to imagine what life would have been like now if said leaders had won. I wonder if RTD to this day ever considers the Daleks to be problematic now in today's day and age. I love to be said, the best possible way in which the nature and narrative of the Daleks could be developed, the story provided by way of their invasion of Earth and dispassionate subjugation of mankind, an excellent human perspective on the horrific extent of the threat these creatures always present. And I couldn't agree more with that statement, and what a way to do it with the Daleks. Now, the Daleks in this story are planning to dig to the core of the Earth in order to obtain control over it, and it's the second time we actually see them. By the way, when I first watched this story ages ago, I didn't actually cotton on to what they were trying to get until I did a rewatch of it. It really went over my head, but I do actually know now. Anyway, we actually find out that these Daleks predate Skaro, which is interesting because the Daleks that we had seen remained on Skaro because of their anatomy. So this is why they were never on Earth, and that's what we were led to believe, that they never made it to Earth. However, these do predate. Now, what do you think of their adaptations and their new look? For me, they don't really do anything. It would have been better if we could have seen what their adaptations had actually did. Still, that pays off much later in Classic, because I guess you could say they hover up the stairs. So there you go. What they did do, though, was turn the men into Robo-Men. That's a brilliant idea. And a very scary one. You've got limited budget, so why not create some Robo-Men and get some actors to do these Robo-Men? Mind control is a terrible notion. So controlling someone's mind and brainwashing them to do your bidding is an allegory for real life, and we all know who the Daleks are based on as well. And if you don't, I recommend going reading about it, should you wish to. That was the Daleks' undoing, of course, part of the resolution of controlling the Robo-Men and getting them to attack the Daleks. That's basically their undoing. The Doctor didn't even hesitate with the Daleks, but we do see him stopping Tyler from shooting the Roboman, which is very much in line with his character. We do see the Doctor at his best here, don't we? This is the days before the sonic screwdriver, thank goodness, and here is your weekly reminder that I hate the sonic screwdriver. He really does have a knack, this Doctor, for problem solving. We see it at its best in part 2 when the Doctor, Ian and Craddock are in prison. The Doctor is trying to figure out how to break them out from jail, whilst unawares that this was a test from the Daleks. Seeing how he uses the magnetic force fields in that little type of test that he actually does, and then uses that to open the door, is actually very intelligent. Also, this scene actually has one of the funniest lines in this particular story. He says to Craddock, "Hold that and shut up, will you?" Very in character, very early style Doctor Who, something which Colin Baker actually picks up on much later, but you know, go figure, that's controversial, I guess you could say that opinion. Now, this breaking out of jail takes up a fair chunk of time, which I actually like. I also really like the little montage where the rebels explain to the Doctor, Ian, Barbara and Susan about the Daleks and the plague, and they do it as a voiceover, which wasn't really a common thing for back then, but I really liked it mixed with the footage with the saucer and the Daleks landing on Earth. Whilst I do like the mad dash and mass battle in part 3, I often do feel like this is a very big filler in order to move the story along. What makes me laugh is the Daleks approaching the stairs. But then it cuts away because obviously at that time they had no way to climb the stairs. It presented a big problem for them, I guess, which of course then they rectify much later on. I also wish that Dartmouth's notes had actually been playing more of a role within the actual story itself. Before he gets exterminated in part 3, we see him leave them for Barbara, and I really wish they had actually utilized that more as part of the resolution of the plot. We do see them briefly, but they're not really played upon. Another character I wish was used more was Wells. Nicholas Smith, best known for playing Mr. Rumbold in Are You Being Served, was simply underutilized. I don't know exactly what else they could have done with him. I would have just liked to have seen more of this particular character. They certainly gave Barbara more to do in this, not that I ever felt she was underutilized at all. Her best bit was when she drove right through the Daleks. She doesn't care, she just floors it and takes them down. One thing I wasn't actually so keen on was part 5 for Barbara and Jenny. They get double crossed. It was the fact that this was actually a very predictable plot device. I saw this coming the first time around when I watched it ages ago. It's rare for a story to have predictableness like this in Classic, but it did happen, and it was there, and I found it very predictable. Although I say that Classic is not really predictable. Susan's predicaments can be very predictable. The one that wasn't predictable was in part 4 with the ladder and the alligator. I think that was done quite well. However, naturally, she twists her ankle in part 1. I quite often think how it was used as a plot device to get them into situations, that type of damsel in distress type of move, but Susan had really caused a problem with this particular one. She got into trouble with her grandfather for accidentally pulling the bridge down over the TARDIS. That was actually a very good plot device. Taking the TARDIS out of action means the Doctor can't actually use it. Not that he uses it much anyway, but he has to find another way to get it cleared. The setup for this, of course, naturally was pretty ominous, especially that poster. It says, "It's forbidden to dump bodies in the river." It's quite a creepy sign, and I think it helps set the scene for what the 4 travellers and viewers were going to experience in this wonderful and thrilling story. John Green 7169 says, the only situation in which Doctor Who should be attached to the capital letters D, E and I. I agree. All we want is just really good storytelling. That's what I think. Let me know what you think. Chat about it, don't shout about it. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Bye bye.